So I'm going to be talking about the full moon in Virgo, as well as some recent updates on the current astrological transits. Mars in Aries and Saturn in Sagittarius, Jupiter about to enter Scorpio. All that coming up in this live update. Okay, so we are doing it here. Talking about this, oops, get this there. Talking about this full moon in Virgo, right? This full moon in Virgo is happening as I speak. It's actually happening as I speak here at the on Wednesday, March 20th. Sorry, just making sure we have this thing set up right. I am looking there at the comments as well. So you see, I have the chart here of the current sky, and you see the sun is at about 5 degrees 59 of Pisces, and we have the moon here at about 5 degrees of Virgo. Now that's about 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. But again, I'm making this at 5:20 p.m. Pacific time. So it's happening live, folks. As you're watching right now, the moon is full. And very, important to understand what that means. It means that if you imagine the Earth is in the middle of this chart, the sun is on one side and the moon is on the other, right? That's pretty powerful stuff that we see. And when we have this full moon, we have this angularity with, as the sun is setting, the moon will be rising. So you can notice that. Again, try to make the chart something that's alive rather than something that is a flat piece of paper. One of the most profound teachings in astrology is to see the living sky and to look at the actual unfolding of energy that's behind all of the that's behind that flat piece of paper, right? So what's behind that flat piece of paper is a living sky, and that living sky, it's very important that you can connect to it. And so you should understand that when we have a full moon, sun is on one side, moon is on the other, and the earth is in the earth. And so this now it's happening with the sun in the sign of Pisces and the moon in the sign of Virgo. Excuse me. Now, of course, this is using the sidereal zodiac, the actual ecliptic zodiac, which measures those precise coordinates. And of course, that's the zodiac that's used in Vedic astrology, has been for thousands of years. And very clearly, because the zodiac is what measures objects circling the earth when we look up into space, one of the objects is the sun. But then there's also Venus, Mercury, Jupiter. They're all measured with the zodiac. Of course, the earth going around the sun is what measures the seasons. So we measure the sun two different ways, and then those two things got joined to create what's called the tropical zodiac, which, of course, that's also valid if people want to do that and want to measure the zodiac that way. But when you're measuring the zodiac, what we're calling a zodiac is still the sky that's surrounding the earth. And so, of course, it's always been measured sidereally primarily, and then later they started to use the tropical placement because there were certain benefits to it. So then a whole system developed around that. But right now, again, this energy of Pisces and Virgo are important. So with the sun in Pisces, which started about 6 days ago, because we can see it's 5:59 of Pisces, that means that we have the this overall life lesson right now of Pisces energy, which is about higher metaphysics, things that are beyond this earth, things that are that really connect us to the great beyond. Now, sometimes, we can connect to the great beyond through things like drugs and alcohol and escapism and things like that. That's the kind of unhealthy quality of Pisces energy, right? This is why Pisces has to do with escapism. But when we understand the nature of reality, we're escaping into reality, into the true reality, and escaping from the false reality, right? So when we escape into reality, rather than escaping from the harsh reality through drugs and alcohol and making ourselves unconscious, we escape into reality through things like meditation, surrender, and connecting to the true self. And the true self is beyond all of the problems and the worries of the world. The true self is that which has never incarnated, has never taken form, is that non-localized divine being, right? And the way to reach that, at least consciously, is through things like meditation and surrender, right? And what exactly are we surrendering, though? That's the important question. So what are we surrendering? We're surrendering a lot of the Virgo stuff in Pisces. So you can understand that that any opposition is like a mirror opposite, but also that thing that needs to be integrated, that sort of completion state. Many now are into like Jungian analysis and whatnot, and you can understand that thing that's opposite is like the shadow, so to speak. And so the shadow of Pisces is Virgo. So we need to incorporate the Virgo principle in order to fully realize the Pisces lesson. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the Virgo energy is about not avoiding all of that difficulty and all that stress and all of that unpleasantness. As I just said, one of the things that can happen in Pisces, and we can just sort of want to escape. But what are we escaping from in Pisces? What are we escaping from? Well, we're escaping from all that Virgo stuff. Think of the difficult quality of Virgo. Now, again, we're talking about potentialities, because Virgo is also all of the energies are divine energies. So in the difficult Pisces stage, it's because we're trying to escape from the difficult Virgo things. So again, the dysfunctional Pisces is when we escape all of the Virgo problems. So in Virgo, the difficult Virgo qualities are, oh my God, all of these details, all this stuff, I'm never going to understand it all. So I'm going to try to organize and manage everything. I'm going to try to get everything in line. I'm going to try to fix everything. I can fix it. I can fix everything. I can get it all sterilized. I'm going to sterilize everything so nothing can kill me. Right? That's the kind of Virgo energy gone haywire. And so when the Virgo energy goes haywire and we spin out on crazy paranoia, then we're like, okay, I need to get away from this, so let me become unconscious and escape into this thing that's escaping from all of those details, right? Escaping from all of that. So when it's conscious, when we bring consciousness into it, then rather than having it be the sort of negative Virgo issue, it's the positive Virgo issue, which supports the positive Pisces. So again, the positive Pisces is that true emanation of spirit from which we come. We emanate from spirit. We are spirit taken form, right? We are spirit as form, or form as spirit, or which one is it? We are form reflecting spirit, right? That's our true nature. Created by karma, right? Created by our past actions. We incarnate. And that's our true nature. to try to return to that. Oops, one second. And so that's the healthy expression. So, but in order to be able to do that, what we need to be able to do is organize our life, organize and structure. For instance, meditation and spiritual practices and what's called sadhana are very precise. There are very specific things you need to do, and you need to do them correctly and in the right order and in the right measure in order to have meditation actually work. Particularly if you're a if you are a typical neurotic human being like me, you can't just go, okay, now I'm going to meditate and it's going to be peaceful and meditative and it's going to work and it's going to feel great and I'm going to see the truth. No, you can't. It doesn't work because your typical state of mind is a state of chaos and disarray. So in order for meditation and sadhana and spiritual practice to work from the state you're at now, which wants to just tune out unconsciously through Pisces energy. And by the way, a very acceptable form of Pisces energy that most of us undergo or that most of us perform are things like entertainment, watching TV, escapism in all its forms, not just drugs and alcohol, but now we escape with all kinds of things because we have so many distractions and we're escaping from that unpleasantness in life. So again, in order to go from that distracted, almost neurotic state of mind that you find yourself in to that state of surrender and connection to the metaphysical and the divine, you need to organize and do things in a particular way, in a particular order. And that's what Virgo is about. So this is how the Virgo-Pisces axis works, right? And so now that it's the sun in Pisces being harmonized with the moon in Virgo, it's in this way, where the sun is in Pisces, which is saying, surrender, relax into that great unity consciousness that precedes all of these details and all of these problems and stresses of the world. Relax into that. The full moon in Virgo is saying yes, and the way to do it is to manage all these things because you're aware in your mind. Again, the full moon brings the mind into it, and it's opposite the pure consciousness of the sun. Pure consciousness of the sun is in Pisces, but the mind, the full moon, the mind is full of details, stresses, problems, worries. Yeah, but how do I do it? But what do I do? And feeling maybe that pressure. This is why there's a restlessness in Virgo, in this full moon in Virgo. So the full moon is like our mind is full of that thing. So the way to understand our mind being full of that thing, which your mind being full of Virgo, stress, pressure, worry, details, to understand the divine holy purpose to that is to realize its opposite, which is the Pisces principle. And again, otherwise we just spin out on the negative triggering of the full moon. And again, we could say we get a little loony when the moon is full. It's because we have all of that energy then in our mind. And because we usually exist at a sort of, unconscious or, subconscious level, we are just kind of triggered around all these Virgo themes. People being worried and people being anal and people being stressed and people having all of those issues right now. Losing the bigger picture, which is that all those details and that methodical precision of Virgo needs to be brought into the realm of spiritual growth and organizing our immediate environment in the correct way and in the proper way so that our soul can relax into that which is beyond this earth. So Virgo is really the sign where we feel the stress and the pressure and the worry of all the details of life. We realize the pressure of that in Virgo. So people who have a lot of planets in Virgo, they're actually quite, they can be quite worried and stressed about all the things they're trying to manage and organize, right? And they can lose the bigger picture. This is the problem with the Virgo, like someone who is a Virgo individual. They get too bogged down in all the pressure and the details of the world, and they lose the bigger picture. And they get stressed because they feel like it's up to them to fix everything, to organize everything, to manage everything. And they lose the bigger picture, which is, whoa, but wait a minute, you're not really, this isn't your entire existence. Your entire existence doesn't revolve around this whole world. I'm seeing some comments where it's like, yes, sadhana is best. It definitely helps to do sadhana. Yes, it helps. It's not just like it helps. That's the point. That's the point of everything. I'm about to sneeze. Wait, let's see. Okay. Sorry. All right. So yes, it says it definitely helps to do sadhana. Okay, but that's like saying it helps to eat. Like if you want to live, it helps to eat food. It helps to drink water. It really helps. It's not just that it helps. Without it, you'll die. You have to understand something. For your soul, it's not just that it helps to do sadhana for your soul. It doesn't help. It's the only thing that your soul needs. It's the only thing. The only thing. That's what your soul needs. If you're not doing it, your soul is not really growing. You're just growing through all of life's pain and suffering. You'll still grow that way, but you'll grow through pain and suffering. People think life is so full of pain and suffering, pain and suffering, pain and suffering. And then people learn that there's this thing called sadhana and spiritual practices. And they realize, oh, the only way your soul grows is not just through pain and suffering. There's another way for your soul's growth, and that's through spiritual practice, meditation, saying mantra, doing that. That's the only thing that your soul wants as far as for your soul's evolution. Your soul is on a deeper level is happy with everything. But again, I'm talking about soul in an ultimate sense. And we usually just talk very mechanically from the level of the ego. And most of the time we say, oh yeah, I want that or I want that. It's the ego. It's not the self. And we forget why we're here most of the time. So when I'm talking about these things, I'm actually talking on a much more ultimate level. Oops, 1 second. I'm talking about on a higher level where your soul is only really nourished in the highest sense from sadhana and from spiritual practice. And so this full moon is really a time to connect with that higher self through spiritual practices, right? And again, there's also a lot of beauty and joy that comes in a more mundane sense with the Pisces-Virgo axis. There's certainly a lot of creativity. Virgo is a very structured and organized sign where we like to beautify and make things beautiful and make things, grow things and turn things into a joy to us here on Earth. So again, because Virgo is an Earth sign, and its real symbol is to organize all of the different facets of life on Earth into the most precise and beautiful way. This is what Virgo is about. So there could be a lot of creativity now on this full moon, and for the next week or so, I find that most of the effects of the full moon happen a few days. We start to see it when the moon is once the moon joins the sign of the full moon. Here it's happening very early in the sign. So then during that day and then the next couple of days, we really see the effects. So it's quite a creative time right now. I know, like with myself, I've also had a lot of interesting new creative breakthroughs. And it's also, again, a time, as I said, even in a deeper sense, there's that need to elevate all of that pressure and worry of Virgo into something more universal, because the difficulty with Virgo is just getting bogged down in all the details of the earth and all the little things that everything does, and then kind of losing ourselves in all of that. And that just creates stress, forgetting the bigger picture. And again, the qualities of Pisces is just staying in the bigger picture so much that we're not down to earth. So bringing those two things together is a big theme for the next several weeks. And this is why, when I talk about lunation cycles, full moons and new moons, I talk about both. You can't just say, well, the moon is here, and that's the only thing you focus on. No, especially for a full moon. The full moon is in contrast to something else. The full moon is full because it's opposite the sun, because it's where the sun is first. Everything starts with the sun, particularly with lunation cycles and eclipses and everything else. The sun has to join one of the nodes. The moon is only full because of its relationship to the sun. Of course, that's only that way because of our relationship to the sun and where we are on our orbit. So the sun is sitting in the middle of the whole thing, and we're going around the sun, and then the moon is going around the earth. So again, we always have to keep these three things in mind. And so it's really, to really understand lunation cycles and whether we're on a new moon or a full moon, you have to understand the whole axis, right? And then if you really want to understand it even more, you want to understand where this is falling from your ascendant. Like, for instance, I'm Gemini. So when Gemini is my rising sign. So this sun is now in the 10th house, the sun cycle of Pisces, and this full moon in Virgo is my 4th house. So it's this axis that's getting activated for me, right? If you're Scorpio, then the full moon is in your 11th house and the sun is in your 5th house. So this 5th and 11th house axis is getting activated. And I see on the comments, Marlene, who was a student for a while, said we're in a giant clockwork. Absolutely. This is why I have my member site. This is why this is why I do daily forecasts all the time. And I also do monthly forecasts, or I'm sorry, I'm going to just type it in here. This is why I also do these lunation cycle forecasts. I just did this morning. I just did the forecast for all 12 signs based on the thing I just told you. Because every month, in fact, every 2 weeks, every month we start a new sun cycle, and then every other month we have a full moon in opposite to the sun. So it's always happening. It's not like we're in a giant clockwork. We are definitely in a giant clock. That's what the sky is, right? And so now we're all collectively, but we have an individual and a collective experience. We're collectively having the Pisces cycle and now the full moon in Virgo within the Pisces cycle. We're all collectively having that. That's why I can speak about many things collectively, because we're all under the same sky. But then individually, we're all experiencing it in a different way. The first way that we can see it is based on our ascendant, because that's our basic incarnation. We've all incarnated primarily. The first place to start is through the ascendant. And again, that never changes. That's where we are. We incarnated as a certain ascendant, and now this lunation cycle is happening in relation to that. And then we might have planets in Pisces and Virgo, like I have Jupiter in Pisces. So this Pisces cycle every year activates my Jupiter in the 10th house in Pisces, right? So this is how the more specific cycles work. And then we all have the dasha cycles as well in Vedic astrology. So there's many cycles within cycles to show how to then take the universal and the collective and narrow it down, through the individual, right? So now we want to talk about the nakshatra here as well, because again, you see this full moon is happening at about 6 degrees of Virgo, and that 6 degrees of Virgo is in Hasta nakshatra. I'm sorry, excuse me, Uttara Phalguni nakshatra. So again, just to make sure you understand, in every Indian text, the nakshatras and the rashis and the signs are exactly aligned. It says it in every text. 27 nakshatras, 12 signs. The zodiac is 9. It'll say very clearly each sign is nine padas, or 9 sections of the nakshatra scheme. It's very clear in every text, and so we have this sidereal integrity of the sky, and in this case we have this full moon is happening in Uttara Phalguni, which is ruled by the god Aryaman, who is the god of contracts and official business, where we literally take all of that power from the kingdom, which is Leo energy. Leo was the last full moon. Again, it goes in cycles. A month ago, the full moon was Leo. Now the full moon is Virgo. Next month, it'll be Libra. So again, we're evolving this throughout the year. So that first section of Virgo, which comes right after Leo, is where we organize all of that power from Leo. We organize the kingdom into a bunch of little tasks. Just look at your life, right? You have a certain family, you have a certain amount of power and, like a power structure in your life, and you have to organize that. You have to keep that organized in some way, and that's literally what Virgo is. It's where you try to organize the power in your life, right? And so that first nakshatra, Uttara Phalguni, is related to, again, the god of contracts, the god of official business. Because, again, if you want to run a kingdom very well, a good king knows how to delegate all these different tasks throughout the kingdom. Really a good, and we can look at this as a business, even like with Leo. Leo has a lot to do with a business, maybe even a government and whatnot. The way a good government or a good business or a good family, a good family, whatever it is run very efficiently, right? Let's say even in your family, you have dinner and then afterwards you clean up for dinner. It's really nice when if you have an organized family, everybody gets their little tasks and everybody does their thing and you have a good time with it and it grows and it fosters cooperation and the kingdom grows as a result. You contrast that with a sort of dictatorship in Leo, and then what happens is nobody is doing their tasks in the spirit of cooperation, so they're not getting done very well, and there's fighting and battling over all the details and all that stuff. That's the negative quality of Uttara Phalguni. Uttara Phalguni is also called the marriage star. The nakshatra before Uttara Phalguni is called Purva Phalguni. Purva Phalguni is ruled by the god Bhagha, who is the god of delight and joy. Even things like, it's kind of like where the king can be kind of lazy and just being fed grapes by all of his concubines or something. It can be. It's not necessarily that. It's also where the king can be very generous. But it's about passion and delight. It's good to be the king. And in Purva Phalguni, it's good to be the king. It's that part of Leo. By the way, again, you can see these direct connections to nakshatras and rashis all day long. It's in every, up until very recently, no one ever really thought there was anything different. And just marvelous explanations of how nakshatras and rashis are aligned. But again, after the delight of the kingdom, then it's also related to courtship, which is Purva Phalguni. So it's said that Lord Shiva courted Parvati, courted and dated his wife in Purva Phalguni, but then he got married in Uttara Phalguni. So again, Uttara Phalguni, this nakshatra, is about the marriage place, right? It's the marriage. He had a lot of fun and courted Parvati in Purva Phalguni, then Uttara Phalguni, where Leo becomes Virgo. Again, it's the bridge between these two signs and these two energies, where the power of the kingdom becomes delegated into many different tasks that are handled skillfully, right? That's this nakshatra. So it's really a great nakshatra and time. And you'll probably notice how your mind, again, it just went into Uttara Phalguni earlier in the day. So it just went into Virgo and Uttara Phalguni earlier in the day. So today and for the next couple of days, you'll really feel that Virgo kind of organizing and that need to be precise and to organize your kingdom in the best way possible, right? That's Virgo, primarily Uttara Phalguni. So first you got to organize that kingdom. The god Aryaman, who, again, the god of contracts. Marriage is a contract. Dating and having fun, which is Purva Phalguni, is not really a contract yet. After Purva Phalguni, Uttara Phalguni says, let's make it official. Just like you might meet some people through business, right? You meet them through business and you enjoy them and you enjoy something you might create together, all this passion, Purva Phalguni, but it's not a business agreement and a business contract until you sign the contract. And that's what Aryaman is. That's who that god is. And Aryaman is also almost always paired with the god Mitra, who is the god of friendship, friendliness, and cooperation. Again, you can see this very clearly, how that could be very beneficial because, again, you also have to remember, like I said, you can see these things are related. Uttara Phalguni is also called the marriage star. How beneficial, of course, marriage is a contract, but how beneficial is it that you and your marriage partner are friendly with each other, get along? Might sound like, well, of course it's good. A lot of people are married, don't get along very well. They're not really friendly. And I'm not talking about, a lot of marriages are based on all kinds of things. A lot of them are even like sexuality and things. They're different energies, as we all know. So this is why Aryaman is often paired with Mitra, the god of friendliness and cooperation, right? And being friendly. So these are big themes right now. And notice how much, most of us won't do business with someone that we don't like or that we feel like, I don't know, maybe there's some benefit to doing business with them, but boy, they're just a real pain in the neck. I don't want to get into some kind of agreement with this person because they're so difficult, or I don't trust them to have some kind of friendly interaction, right? It's really built into it. So these are all the sort of divine qualities of this full moon. And, so you want to ponder these things right now. So again, you might be even on the verge of maybe wanting to contract something or feeling like, I want to, formally get this thing done. Some kind of formally hire a contractor to do something, or I don't know, feeling like you want to be doing something like that. This is why maybe those ideas are coming up, right? So keep those things in mind for the next several days especially. And, the full moon is mainly important as it's a reflection of where the sun is. So it's not like 30 days. And by the way, I also just want to say this, that it's not to disparage other astrologers' work, but sometimes you'll hear astrologers say things like, well, it's the full moon, so it's the beginning of a cycle of blah, blah. Actually, no, it's not. The the full moon is not the beginning of the cycle in this sense. Okay, it's the halfway point between the sun and the moon, right? It's the halfway point. The beginning is the new moon. That's when sun and moon come together. And by the way, you can see that even with Indian ceremonies and whatnot, they start on the first lunar day, when the sun and moon come together. By the way, I am looking at the comments and someone said, when do the questions start? I'm not sure there's going to be questions. I did it live because it's easier to do it live. So if you're just here for questions, I'm not sure I'll answer questions. I might, but this is mainly a forecast and an update. So if you're waiting to ask a bunch of questions, might not get to it, okay? So just to let you know. Questions in all caps. So we'll see what happens, and I might look through some questions, okay? So that's the, you want to understand that the full moon is that halfway point, right? And so we have a, so I'll talk about a few other things here with the chart. So as we can see, we have Jupiter right at the edge. There are a few big shifts that are happening. I'm actually finishing the April and May forecast right now. 1 second. And we have some big shifts that are coming. Oh, it's not rude. I was just saying. All right. So anyway, Jupiter is about to go into Sagittarius, right? And it's going to just poke its head in there. Jupiter's just going to poke its head into Sagittarius and then go back into Scorpio later. And I talked about this in my 2019 forecast. Actually, if you let me just do this. If you haven't seen that yet, because a lot of people have, it's a free forecast. I'm just going to put the link here. 2019. Oops. 19 Vedic Astrology. This is a this is a free it's a free web class, a free webinar where I talk about like 10 of the real important shifts this year. One of them is this cycle here of Jupiter poking his head in Sagittarius and then moving back into Scorpio. Very important transition that we're sort of in right now. We're sort of in it now because you see Jupiter is 29 degrees. He's Gandanta at the very last point. So right now Jupiter is hovering between Scorpio and Sagittarius. Scorpio and Sagittarius. Now notice how things feel like our teachings and what inspire us and all of these other things seem very in flux right now. Notice how it's a bit unnerving, but it's also quite exciting. There are a few things that are on the brink, right? Rahu is about to go into Gemini, which is happening in the next few days. But also Jupiter is right at the edge between Scorpio and Sagittarius. Huge shifting happen, right? So it's this changing between the kind of scary, perhaps like paranoid, qualities of Scorpio. That's not the only quality of Scorpio, but we can definitely feel that kind of energy where we're seeing a lot of the darker qualities of our fears and projections, coming forth and leading to a hopeful answer. Definitely can see quite a bit of it in politics and other things where a lot of the triggering and the paranoia and the negative qualities of that feel like they're really untangling and we're seeing the truth. A lot of this has to do with Rahu about to go into Gemini, because as I've said over and over again, Rahu in Gemini is going to really show us the truth. We're going to get the data. We're going to get the proof, because Gemini is about the proof. Screw all those beliefs. People have a lot of crazy beliefs, but when we see the facts and we see the evidence and we see the truth, it shifts everything. So we're right on the verge of that right now. Again, I said this for months, said it since last year, that's what Rahu through Gemini is going to be. But even before that now, we have Jupiter just poking his head in Sagittarius, so we feel this kind of hope. This like, wow, I really feel like there's hope right around the corner, because Jupiter in Sagittarius is big. Jupiter rules Sagittarius. So again, with the next month or so, Jupiter's going to go into Sagittarius, and then he's going to stop and then go retrograde back into Scorpio. But this is the kind of shifting consciousness that you can be feeling right now. Notice that. Notice that kind of inspiration where you just have a sense that good things are coming. At the very least, people are starting to wake up to a truthful answer rather than just so much triggering and unconsciousness. Of course, there's still a lot of that there, but we can all kind of sense. This is what you sense. So I just say it just like that. You can sense that. And if you're watching this and listening, and you know what I'm talking about, and you can sense that something big is shifting, go ahead and type it in the box. Go ahead and type, yes, I can feel the shift. I'd like to see how many people are sensing, yes, I can feel that even though things are weird and dark, I have hope. Like there's hope right around the corner. And you're right, it is there. Right? And so, again, you can see it right here in the chart. Jupiter is right on the edge. And I'll move this forward. I'll start moving it forward each day, right? So we'll have it go forward each day. This is, you see, this is March 20th. Now watch, we'll go March 21st. Watch the degrees of Jupiter. Look, see, we're getting the yeses. Now watch and see, this is 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th. You see how slow they move because Jupiter is slowing down. But this time next week, Jupiter is 29:56, then 58. Then he pokes his head in there on the 29th, right? March 29th, we can see Jupiter pokes his head here in Sagittarius, right? So look, we can go forward a little while. You can see then Jupiter turns retrograde right here. So he turns retrograde right here on April 10th. But you see he starts to slow down right at that point between the two signs. You see, this is barely 1 degree. This is barely in Sagittarius. So what this means is that Jupiter like slowing down right at this point between sidereal Scorpio and Sagittarius. So Jupiter is barely moving and he's stopping right there. It's called a station. So right now he's kind of like stationary retrograde, but he hangs out there. We'll go forward again. You look and see now he goes back into Scorpio again, comes back to about where he is right now. He's about right here right now on April 28th. So literally in within like a month, he's going to be in this same section of the sky for about a month, but just barely moving forward and barely moving back for about a month, just kind of stopping here, right? So that's a big shift that we feel right now. Very important. And you can also see when I did that, right here now this chart says April 28th, but if I go back, let me go back a few weeks, you'll see if I go back a month, K2 will already be here. Look, K2 is already 26 degrees. If I go back a month, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, right? 5 weeks. Okay, so here's the 24th. Yeah, he goes in on the 23rd, I believe was the day. The day is 23rd. Yeah. So this is the 22nd. Again, that's in 2 days. So in 3 days, boom. March 23rd, this is Lahiri Ayanamsha, and it's the true node, okay? K2 is going to move into Sagittarius, and Rahu is going to move into Gemini, right? So again, this is, and as you can see, if we move this forward, and then we'll have the Sun and Moon come together April 5th in Pisces up here, but you can see how in the next few weeks, there's going to be some big shifts. Now, of course, right now Mercury is also retrograde. Mercury is going to be retrograde. He'll stay retrograde until March 28th. Then we'll start to feel some of these things moving forward that had been going backwards a little bit. I just recently did some things. I just had recently a very interesting Mercury retrograde thing where I released some courses that came out, and as soon as people registered for them, there was a little glitch on my website. Again, it actually wasn't even because my website malfunctioned, but Google started a Gmail and servers stopped delivering. All the notification messages went to spam, and I had people not getting their stuff. Little Mercury retrograde, but then the solution winds up making the situation better. So again, this is one of the things you need to always understand about retrograde, or any other kind of astrological situation. It might present a bit of a problem, and retrograde is classic to present a bit of a problem, but then fixing the problem improves your life. It's not because it wants to punish you. It's because you needed to fix this problem. And that's what happened even with my little issue. You know, it was a day and a half. It's frustrating because I hate having issues like this. I hate having, 10 or 15 people not get something, and I got to sit there and figure out what it is. It's a pain. But what wound up happening is figuring it out now allowed me to really improve and tighten up several things that I had just kind of been letting go. And they're important things. They have to do with my web hosting and servers and getting things tighter, right? So you deal with the frustration, then fixing the problem makes the situation better. It's always the case, right? And exactly, one step back, two steps forward. That's the way it works, right? And again, I also mention this because we'll move forward. If we look at this a few weeks, again, Mercury goes direct on March 28th. But again, we just looked at Jupiter turns retrograde. So we got Jupiter retrograde coming up within a month, within a couple weeks. I think it was March 8th was the day. Let's go back. April 8th, I think it was. Yeah, this is the 9th. No, I'm sorry, April 10th. So April 10th, that's like 20 days from now, Jupiter turns retrograde. So again, what's happening now is Jupiter's going up to that point, like I just said, slowing down, then he's going to go retrograde. What do you think that means? Well, it tends to correct things. It tends to reverse things. It tends to fix some things, and it might be confusing for a while, but then by the time Jupiter starts moving forward again, which is in August, by the time Jupiter starts moving forward again, he starts moving forward with a whole new vision, a whole new sense of inspiration, a whole new connection to the wisdom and the truth. So, never said it's going to be easy. Jupiter is stationing and going retrograde, right at the edge of Scorpio and Sagittarius. So again, we're feeling things slide, and then he goes retrograde back into Scorpio. So again, we've sensed there's some hope, but then he goes retrograde back into Scorpio, and we're going to see a lot of the darkness again. We're going to feel like this wrangling is happening. Then he goes forward again. So just notice over the summer and for much of the rest of the year, there's going to be a lot of wrangling over these teachings, higher principles. Of course, a lot of the way we see this in our life does have to do with politics and world events like we see all around the world. Of course, in the U.S., we have a president and a government that's really dealing with a lot of these gnarly issues for sure. But even in the UK, they're dealing with Brexit, and there's all kinds of other gnarly political situations around the world that could get really complicated, right? So Jupiter going back and forth has a lot to do with that. And then we're going to see, again, getting a little ahead, but if we go forward a few weeks, Saturn's going to be turning retrograde not long after. Saturn turns retrograde by the end of April. Yeah, by early May, then Saturn's retrograde for 5 months. So this is a kind of foreshadowing of what's coming as well. And the other thing that I didn't really mention is Mars is about to leave Aries and go into Taurus. Actually, even within the next couple days. This is the 21st, and on the 22nd, Mars goes into Taurus, which is going to be a little more calm and peaceful. When Mars went into Aries, there's some, potential for arguing and battling going on. And you notice I didn't really mention yet, I was going to talk about the equinox. I'll say a few things about the equinox, which of course it's very important because the equinox has to do with the Earth going around the sun. And of course, this is how the tropical zodiac works. And it's really about the the seasons. And the tropical zodiac is where we take the the calculations for the seasons in the northern hemisphere and use them to begin the zodiac. In some ancient text, it's said that rather than the zodiac being the sidereal portions that are aligned with the space and the nakshatras, that we should start the zodiac on the vernal equinox, which is what just happened, right? And of course, but then that also aligns with the seasons and the spring in the northern hemisphere. Now, of course, the spring in the northern hemisphere is the fall in the southern hemisphere, right? So there's a hemispheric quality. Again, aside from this has nothing to do with astrology, by the way. This is just basic astronomy and the way the Earth is in the sky in relation to the sun. So, the equinoxes and the solstices are really important because, especially with the equinox, what it means, aside from the fact that the word means equal night, that particular day or that particular moment, what it actually means is that, and again, this is how you can know, it's totally based on the hemispheres, is that for the next 6 months, there's going to be more light in the northern hemisphere than in the southern hemisphere, right? So today it's equal. On the equinox, it's equal, right? Happens like at that moment, the exact amount of light all over the Earth, whether you're at the equator or what have you, right? Equal night. But then the next moment, there's going to be more sunlight in the northern hemisphere, north of the equator, for the next 6 months, right? That's literally what it means. Then the point where there's the most sunlight is the summer solstice. That's when the angularity of the sun, of the Earth is the most direct toward the sun, right? That's in the northern hemisphere, the first day of summer, which is like June 21st. But again, in the southern hemisphere, that's the first day of winter. So it's all hemisphere based because the Earth is sitting in the sky, it's tilted, but it's not pointing in any direction. Crazy enough, I see people now saying that the Earth is pointing up or something. No, it's not pointing up. We're suspended in space. You could flip the Earth upside down, quote, relative to the way we look at it, and it's still in the sky that way. So for those who live below the equator, it's not the vernal equinox, it's the autumnal equinox. And those below the equator just had most of the light, or they have had the most sunlight in their hemisphere for the last 6 months. Since the autumnal equinox in the northern hemisphere, there's been more light in the southern hemisphere for that 6-month period. Now it shifts. Now there's going to be more sunlight in the northern hemisphere for the next 6 months, right? So this is what spring and fall, autumn and spring refer to. Again, nothing to do with astrology, but so you want to understand, right? As it relates to astrology, of course, the seasons have been used since legitimately the 9th century in Persia to start the zodiac. So now the first degree of Aries now doesn't have to do with the sky like it was before. It now starts on this vernal equinox moment. And again, it brings these qualities. They say that these qualities of the seasons and whatnot are built into the zodiac signs. And there's definitely some references to that in all the texts, right? It's not the only reference, or it's not the only way to look at it, because when you have that being part of the delineation, then you also have that problem with the hemispheres that I talked about, because it's definitely an issue, right? So anyway, not to get into those kind of thorny controversies, but it's important to understand that this is the vernal equinox in the northern hemisphere, right? It's happening right now as well. Or just happened. I think it was 5:50 Pacific time. So I talked through both the full moon and the vernal equinox happening at just about exactly the same time. Again, vernal equinox, northern hemisphere. I respect my friends who live below the equator. In fact, I talked to one of them today from South Africa. And believe me, it is not the vernal equinox for him. And I have great friends who live in Australia and New Zealand and below the equator, and it is not the vernal equinox for them. They are getting ready for 6 months of colder weather, and we're going to have the northern hemisphere with more light for the next 6 months. So it's very important to understand these things. Especially once you start looking at how the astrology system's developed and the sense behind the zodiacs, you'll see why there was a good reason to use this calculation for many things. And I'm going to be having some conversations with other astrologers that are very good with the astronomy as well, and bring some of that out. I'm waiting. I'm setting up those things now. So big things ahead. And so I didn't really know, but if people did have a few questions, I can look and ask questions, especially or answer questions, particularly if they have something to do with what we talked about. The thing about the questions is many times it's just they're so random, or they're about someone's chart or whatever, and so I already talked for more than an hour. But if somebody has especially some decent questions about what I just talked about, to clarify, that would be good.